welcome back to my channel. This is my July and August wrap up. I didn't bother, actually no, that's a lie. It's not that I didn't bother to do a wrap up at the end of July, beginning of August. I didn't really have time, motivation, energy, all of that. But also in July, I only read 4 books because again, time, motivation, energy, all of that. So I didn't really have much to talk about, and so I thought it would just be easier to get to the end of August, hopefully read a little bit more, which I did. Not much, but I did. And then talk about everything together. So I have 9 books to talk about in this video, meaning I only read 5 books in August, which is very, very low for me. 5 books in a month is very low. 4 books in a month is unheard of. I can't remember the last time I read that few books in 1 month. Over the summer, I do tend to get in reading slumps occasionally, but to be honest, the reason for this slump is because work. I keep saying it, work has been absolutely atrocious. There's all sorts going on in the company that I work for right now. I got a new team in June and that was pretty great. It was a new role for me, still managing people, but a different team of people, so a brand new experience. So I was getting to know them, but I also have my old team that I'm still managing, and that's a very different group or different type of roles to manage, and the two, it's different. It's difficult trying to balance both of them. So I have been really struggling with that, and that's the reason I haven't been reading very much. I've just not been able to concentrate. I think in September things should improve. I'm already getting the hang of how things are working at work, but also I have a week and a half off. So that is very welcome, very much needed. My husband and I and the puppy are going up to the Peak District for a couple of days. I didn't want to go for too long because first of all, we're trying to save money for a trip to Australia that we're doing for a friend's wedding, and then for our own big celebratory wedding party, which is mid next year. We could only afford a short trip, but also I didn't want to put the cats in a cattery because they're going to be in a cattery when we go to Australia, and it's not very nice for them, I don't think. I think obviously they much prefer being at home, and I always feel really bad when we put them in the cattery. It's a lovely place. The staff there are absolutely wonderful. I just don't like doing it. So we're only going for 2 nights to the Peak District, 3 days. That will be absolutely lovely, and I may record it if I feel like it. I don't know, depends on the vibe, I guess. Anyway, so I am here to talk about the 9 books that I read in July and August. We've got a mixture of genres here. In July, I went through a bit of a horror thriller phase, and then in August things were a tiny bit more varied. Not much, but a tiny bit. Let me go through what I read in July first. The first book I read and finished was From Below by Darcy Coates. This is, I think, the 4th Darcy Coates book that I've read. This one is about a person who is putting together a crew for her documentary, and they are diving down to a shipwreck which shouldn't be at the bottom of this particular sea. I think it went missing in like the early 20th century. People lost contact with the ship. Now it has been found at the bottom of the sea, miles and miles off course. And so there's a documentary being made about that and what could have happened to it, and I think like how the ship is sort of deteriorating down there. And then of course, because it's a horror book, things start to go wrong when the characters are down in the sea. And I am terrified of deep water. I find it quite, not even quite, I find it very, very scary because you cannot control the water. Obviously you don't know what's underneath you. These scuba divers, they're already at the bottom, so you don't have to worry about that, about anything coming along and like nibbling your toes. The crushing weight of the water, if something goes wrong down there, it's going to kill you. And that's the same reason I'm quite scared of space, except I'm never going to go to space, and there's a good chance I could end up in an ocean. Not a massive chance, but you know, a good one. So this was absolutely horrifying to me. I gave it 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I did find that the beginning was a little bit dragging for the first maybe 50 to 100 pages. The main characters, I liked them. They're all part of a crew, and I really liked their dynamic and how they were getting along or not getting along, but I didn't really like any of the characters individually, in that like I've forgotten about them at this point. But I did very much enjoy it, and the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. I listened to part of it on audio as well, and the audiobook was very, very good, so I'd highly recommend reading this one if you like horror thriller books set on or under the ocean. Also, if you're a fan of space horror, I think this has similar vibes, so go and check this one out if you are interested in that. I also read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a thriller book. This is about a woman called Jessica who 10 years ago graduated from college, and now she is at a college reunion. She's basically trying to make a triumphant return because she was popular in college, but she's never really been able to get that feeling back in like her adult life. She really wants to prove herself and show her former classmates that she has been getting along really well, and that the big thing that happened in her past hasn't really brought her down or affected her. And that big thing is that one of her close friends was murdered in her dorm room that she shared with the main character Jessica back in their college days. So Jessica reunites with her group of four friends. The group were all friends together when they were in college, and it's told in the past and present day, and you're kind of trying to figure out what happened to the girl Heather who was killed. I really enjoyed this one. This was my first Ashley Winstead book and I loved it. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I knocked it half a star off and I can't remember why. I'm really trying to recall, but I cannot remember. I do remember really enjoying the main character Jessica and her kind of relationship with one of the guys, and how their friendship evolved into a relationship, and then that was in the past. And in the present day, they're not together and how they're handling it. I really enjoyed that dynamic, and I shipped it basically. I was really surprised to find myself shipping a relationship in a thriller book, because that never happens. I don't tend to care that much, but I just love these two together. I can't remember his name, and it's probably a tiny bit of a spoiler if I do say his name anyway. So yeah, really enjoyed it, had a ship, was really interested in the unsolved murder, so loved this one. Then I read Something Is Killing the Children Volume 7. This is a horror graphic novel series. Obviously this is the 7th one. I gave this one 4 stars. This follows a monster hunter called Erica Slaughter, and she was previously in a kind of monster hunting society, but she, for various reasons, didn't agree with their practices, so she's kind of like a lone ranger now, and she has to, in the first volume, go to a town and figure out how to kill the monster that's killing the children. What I really like about this series is the way that monsters are kind of manifested. So it's the children who are telling these stories, who believe in the monsters, that literally manifest them. The monsters come to life and then they end up killing the children, and only the children can see these monsters, the adults can't, unless they're part of this secret society that Erica Slaughter is part of. It's such a cool series. I really enjoy it. I think volume 7 was the end of a longer arc, and I don't know if the authors are going to carry on with this or carry on following Erica, or if they're going to do something new. I know there's a spin-off series which I'm really interested in checking out, so I want to get my hands on these books myself and keep them on my shelves, because previously I have been getting them from the library and I really want my own copies so that I can reread them, but they're very expensive, so I need to wait until probably after my big wedding next year to be able to afford them, or to be able to buy them without feeling guilty. Really highly recommend this graphic novel series, horror graphic novel series. Really intense and gruesome, but I love it. And then I read We Used to Live Here, which is another horror book. This is about a woman whose name I can't remember. She is living with her partner, whose name I also can't remember. This is the theme. I cannot remember character names. They live together and they have just bought this house together, and they are in the process of renovating. I think this is kind of their job. They move from place to place and renovate the houses and flip them. And then the main character is at home on her own one day, and she can't get hold of her partner. She doesn't know where she is. She's not answering the phone. And this family show up at her door. They ask if they can come in because the husband, the man, used to live there, and he wants to apparently show his family his old family home. From there, things get really weird. The family are weird themselves, but then the neighbours start to say weird things about this husband, and nothing really seems to add up. And so the main character is getting more and more disturbed by what's going on. It was honestly such a good story. I read it in less than 24 hours. I think I really struggled to get to sleep the night that I was reading it. Not just because it was unsettling and disturbing, but because I really wanted to carry on reading it. I got my husband involved in it as well, because there are hidden messages throughout the book, and I missed the last couple because I was just so obsessed with reading through it so quickly, and I've had to since give the book back to the library. But I think I want to get my own copy, figure out those secret messages, and also reread this book because it is really good. It was originally, I think, a Reddit short story. I believe it was posted on Our No Sleep, and it's now since been picked up by a publisher, and it's so good. Honestly, it's so good. Really weird, and the ending doesn't really wrap everything up neatly. It's kind of one of those horror books that has a bit of an open ending, but it kind of leaves you thinking, and you can sort of put together what's going on, but there's something unsettling still about it, and I really enjoyed it. So overall, July was a really good month. My average rating was 4.4, which is absolutely amazing. This never happens to me. So even though I wasn't reading very much, the books that I was reading were brilliant, and I had a really good month. In August, I read 5 books and my average rating was 4 stars, which again is really, really good for me. Normally my average rating is like 3.5. I'm quite happy with this. Starting off, I kicked the month off by reading The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is an adult fantasy, kind of a romance book, but it's more just adult fantasy, I would say. So this is it's about vampires. The main character is a human who has been raised by a vampire king, lord. She is about to take part in a bunch of trials because if she wins the trials, then she gets to make a wish. She gets to talk to a goddess who these trials are for and make a wish and ask for something. So the book follows her as she's going through these trials, and then in the background there's kind of an unrest happening and it's affecting her vampire dad, the king, and the world is kind of changing. So I really, really enjoyed this one. I loved the romance between the characters until the very end. I'll get into that later. The main character, again, whose name I cannot remember. I really enjoyed following her, really enjoyed the trials, and I really enjoyed a lot of the side characters actually, which doesn't often happen in fantasy books, at least in the first book in a fantasy series. It takes me a while to get used to characters sometimes. The trials were a lot of fun. I did find the world building to be quite confusing at first. I'm going to do a recap of this book to explain it because I really want to talk about it a little bit more in a bit more detail and also hopefully help some people out, because the world building and the divisions of the vampires is a bit confusing. I don't think the author did a great job of explaining it in the beginning, but by the end I think I got the hang of it. There were 2 things that meant I didn't rate this a 5 stars. I only gave it 4.5, which is still really, really good, but I could not in good conscience rate this 5 because, first of all, right at the beginning, the main character's only female friend is killed by a bunch of vampires in a really like sickening and gruesome way, and it's kind of never really talked about again. It just kind of adds to her trauma, and I didn't really care for that at all. I don't like that trope, especially because the friend hadn't been on the page for very long, so we didn't really feel much of a connection to her. So it was just kind of there to like try and build the main character's character, I suppose, give her a bit more trauma to deal with. And then there's one line right at the end of the book where the love interest says that he's going to do something and he announces it to a group of people, and I could not get on board with that. I absolutely hated him in that moment, and I don't know how the author is going to win him back or win back my affection for him after saying that. That is a massive no-no for me. And I imagine for a lot of people. I can't say what it is because it's a massive spoiler. And I know that he didn't mean it. He was just saying it for these other people to keep up appearances. No, just no. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I'm currently reading the novella. I know you technically don't have to, but I wanted to. It made sense for me to read it. So yeah, I'm slowly carrying on with this series. I've told my friend to buy it already and she has, so I'm waiting for her to finish it so that we can discuss. I then read another Ashley Winstead book, and that was The Last Housewife. This is her second thriller book. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It wasn't as good as In My Dreams That Hold a Knife in my opinion, but I found a lot of people prefer them the other way around, which I think is very interesting. So this one is about a cult. The main character, again, back in college, had a couple of friends and there were some traumatic incidents, I would say. And now she finds out through a podcast that one of her college friends has taken her own life. And that's actually what happens to a third friend a few years before. So the main character teams up with the podcast host, who is also a childhood friend of hers, to find out what's happening and why this has become a pattern. And there's culty stuff in it. I don't really want to say too much because you do discover a lot as you go. Just didn't love this one as much as the first. I felt like I didn't really connect with the characters as much and the main group of friends. It was all a bit disconnected, disjointed, and didn't love it. There was a twist towards the end, which I didn't really see coming. So that was quite impressive. I did enjoy that. I really enjoy books with podcast elements, but I didn't listen to this one, so I don't know how well the podcast stuff is done. In writing, it was just fine, but maybe as an audiobook, it would be even better. So yeah, enjoyed this one, but not my favourite. What was my favourite though? My favourite book of the month was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I gave this one 5 stars. This is the second Abby Jimenez book I've given 5 stars, and I just adore her books. I adored this so much. This is about a woman called Emma who is a travelling nurse. So she travels around the country with her best friend, and they are temporarily employed by various hospitals and I guess like practices as well, but mainly hospitals. And they get to see so many different places and don't really settle down. There's also a guy called Justin whose mother, can I tell you this part? It doesn't say on the back. So Justin's mother is going away, so he is going to get guardianship of his siblings, and he's really struggling with that because he feels like he's not really ready for kids. He will look after his siblings because someone has to, and you know, he wants them to be well, but it is really affecting him. And the reason the two of them meet is because Justin apparently has this curse. I'm sure you've heard this before, but let me tell you again anyway. Justin, it has a curse, or believes he does, in that whenever he meets someone and dates them, they break up, and then the very next person that person dates is their soulmate, and they end up getting married. And so Justin posts about this on Reddit as like a funny joke, and Emma and her friends see it, and Emma messages him. She's like, oh my god, this happens to me too. You don't really find out anything about Emma's past and how many times this has happened to her or anything. You get a little bit of detail on Justin's side, but the curse really isn't like the biggest thing in this. It's kind of like a temporary relationship thing. Oh, I forgot to say, like, they decide to date and try to break the curse. If they date each other, they should then each meet their soulmates in their heads. Obviously, this goes horribly wrong, and it's a romance book, so they end up getting together and falling for each other. But what I really liked about this one the most was the trauma and the absolute PTSD Emma had and was working through, or was trying to work through, or dealing with, trying to deal with. Abby Jimenez has such an incredible talent for writing really deep topics. I really related to Emma and her relationship with her family, let's say. I don't really want to go into too much detail in case people watch my videos who I'm really not comfortable with. Anyway, I really related to her on that front. If you've read the book, then you may know what I'm talking about. And even though I've read Abby Jimenez's other books, I didn't connect all the dots, and I was super shocked by the DNA test in this one. I don't want to say anything else just in case you guys are just as shocked as me. My friend caught on like almost immediately, but I read the books so far apart I couldn't tell what was going on, and that was quite funny, and I literally screamed. Fell off my beanbag chair. I love this book so much. I would highly recommend it. I'd recommend all of Abby Jimenez's books that I have read. I've only read Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and now this one, but I would really like to read the rest of her backlist, even though people say they're not as good. I don't believe you, because I do love Abby Jimenez. So yeah, 5 stars to this one. Please read it. I love it so much. I read The Last Thing He Told Me, which I got out from the library, and this was just alright. I've given it 3 stars. It's probably more of a 2.5, I would say. It's definitely like a action thriller sort of thing. In this one, the main character, whose name is Hannah, her husband disappears one day. His name is Owen, and he leaves her a note to say protect her. He is telling Hannah to protect his daughter. So she takes this very seriously, and she starts looking into why the daughter might need protection in this way. Like, it's a bit of an extreme note to write, and she kind of wants to know where Owen has gone, what his backstory is. She doesn't really know much about him. It was very interesting and a very fast read, but it's definitely not my favourite thriller I've ever read, and I'm going to forget about it, to be honest, now that I'm returning this book to the library soon. There's not really much else to say, other than it was fun. And then finally, the last book that I read in August, these are actually out of order, and I haven't read them in this order, but the last book that I'm going to be talking about for August is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. This is her like 8th book, I think, and I've read all of them apart from 0 Days, because since she moved publisher, I found that the style of her books have really changed. She seems to be doing more like action crime thrillers now rather than domestic psychological thrillers, and I definitely prefer her psychological stuff, but One Perfect Couple was very interesting. So this is about a bunch of people who are mainly influencers with like YouTube, Instagram, wannabe reality star actors, and they all get together to go onto a private island, and the idea of this island is that it's kind of like what I imagine Love Island is about. I've only seen 1 episode of Love Island in my life, and I was very drunk when I watched it, so I don't actually know what Love Island is about and what the purpose of it is, but this is kind of how I imagine Love Island to be, in that the influencers all go in as couples, and they are couples in real life, and then they decide each night whether to stay with their partner or if they want to get with a different one, or they are forced to because their partner goes home and is eliminated. So it's about a reality TV show, except it doesn't get very far into that because there's a massive storm on the first night and the show has to get scrapped. And it's just like a survival island novel from that point forwards. I really enjoyed it. The ending tried to be twisty, I felt, but I don't think it was. I just didn't really care for the twists or any of the extra information. It was just like meh. But the rest of the book, the survival stuff, was really good. I myself started to feel a bit like dehydrated and sunburnt while I was reading it, so I gave this one 4 stars. It was a really enjoyable read. And I probably will remember it for the setting and the premise, if not the characters, because again, Don't really care for many characters in thrillers. I can't remember any of their names. But I do wish Ruth Ware would go back to her psychological domestic thriller side, because that is so much better to me. I think what I'm going to do is read 0 Days and do another Which Ruth Ware book is best video, because I really enjoyed doing my first one. And that was quite a few years ago now, actually. I think that was back in like 2019. So could definitely do with an update, I think, and I might reread some of my favourites by her. Just for that video, because she is one of my favourite authors, or she was up until she switched publisher, and I do wonder why she switched publisher. Is there like something weird going on there, or I don't know. I'd really like to know the backstory, but regardless, I really enjoyed this one, and like I said, I gave it 4 stars. So those are all the books that I read in July and August. I really hope that the next few months of the year are more relaxed for me, that I'm able to get back into the reading zone and enjoy myself more. I've got a ton of books on the go at the moment. I'm not going to list them all or anything, but I'm really struggling to just focus on one. So I'm in the middle of like 5 at the moment at various stages. So I hope that with my week off, I managed to really like get my head down and focus and relax, and that should help me read more, I think, and record more videos, because I've been slacking with my video recording because of this massive slump and because of work, because it's all work's fault. So thank you for watching. Let me know what your favourite book of August or July was in the comments down below. Coming up, I've got a book haul, maybe a couple of vlogs and a couple of recaps as well. So stay tuned for those. I cannot wait to record and post them and share them with you all. Thanks for watching. Bye.